Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Calvin. My pledge bro, Brian Van. We're going to be presenting to you guys about volunteering with the International Board. We're going to be going over what we do, the different teams that make up the International Board, as well as different areas that you could possibly volunteer on if you were interested. So this is the agenda of the slides that we're going to be going through today. First off, we're going to be introducing us as the presenters. We're going to go through what the International Board is, as well as the team structures. We're going to briefly go over our personal experiences since we've joined the board, what we've worked on, as well as next steps and Q&A from you guys. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to include them in the chat or save them for the end. So a quick introduction. Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Calvin Guo, also known as Blitzkrieg. I currently serve as the Director of Undergraduate Operations on the International Board, and I crossed spring 2015 at Syracuse University.
What's good, everybody? My name is Brian Van, nicknamed Rainex. Currently serve as the District Governor for both the Great Lakes West and Great Lakes East districts, across in the spring of 2015 at DePaul University. So a little bit of what we're going to do in this first section. We're going to talk about what the International Board is. We're going to go kind of break down the general structure of what the positions within the organization are and how they flow against one another. And then we'll break down each team and highlight a few qualities that makes them unique. As we go through these slides, we just want, it might be beneficial for you to see if your skills, your qualities, your passions just fall in line with some of the expectations of the positions.
So this is a brief diagram of what the board structure looks like. Up top, we have the BOD, the typical e-board components. We have the president, the vice president, internal, external, as well as you have the vice president of finance and vice president of communications. Underneath that, you have the executive director that works hand in hand with the cabinets. You see all the directors across the board, the director of graduate operations, director of programming, undergraduate operations, communications, expansion, and education. And within each of those teams, they're made up of either coordinators, governors, or administrators. And even though we're all broken out into our individual teams, there's plenty of areas of cross collaborations between them. Such examples would be like communications, working on PR stuff for a convention that programming's working to plan. Another example would be operations, working on getting brothers from nearby chapters to go out and assist with possible expansion or education projects at universities.
So first things first, first thing we're going to be talking about today is the Graduate Affairs team. So as Calvin mentioned earlier, this is led by the Director of Alumni Services, and it consists of a team of Graduate Affair coordinators. So interesting thing about this team is that this is actually our newest one. After assisting the chartering of the Florida graduate chapter, the team basically focuses on developing grad chapters in areas with large compositions of fraternity members. Some of the projects that are included are just are potentially like an alumni convention. Currently, we have components of alumni events that have fallen in line with the previous conventions, I believe, over the past 2 years. So there's a lot of operation, there's a lot of development within this area. And as it's still new, and as there's still so much room for development and focus on shaping any responsibilities and goals, this is a good place for you to, a potential candidate to kind of go into if you want to work on projects on a similar front.
So next up, we have the programming team. So the programming team is made up of the director of programming. There you have Ian on the side, as well as programming coordinators. So everything that you're going through today was an effort that was pushed by the programming team as well as other collaborating teams. They mainly focus on planning these events such as Winter Orientation, Convention, and Leadership Summit, getting everyone there, making sure everyone has their rooms. We have the appropriate rooms to have our trainings in and the necessary spaces, as well as getting you guys food if need be, right? They also work on drafting the event scripts, the workshop plans, and working to host the guest speakers in accordance with the event objectives, such as traditionally during convention, we have like the Man of the Year speech, where we invite someone in as a guest speaker to basically give a talk to our brothers. So this is all coordinated and planned by the programming team.
So up next, we got the operations team. And this is something, if you guys have any questions regarding this, is something that Calvin and I can definitely answer. This is made of the Director of Undergrad Operations, our man Calvin himself, and as well as as well as consisting of various district governors, myself included. Interesting thing about this is that our team has more than doubled in size since the last year. As you guys may know before, we worked under 6 regions, and with the restructuring, we broke those regions into districts. So some of the responsibilities include assisting in the day-to-day operations within the fraternity from the international board standpoint, and ensuring that the requirements of each chapter are fulfilled and any assistance that the chapter needs are met. District governors work to coordinate district events such as brotherhood rallies, regional brotherhood rallies, things along that nature, as well as collecting the information needed for chapters and auditing the data submitted for the accreditation. So if you guys don't know, the accreditation is basically a way to calculate a chapter's performance based off of metrics. And this is something provided by the chapter itself and verified by the district governor.
So next up, we have the communications team. It's made up of the director of communications as well as a social media coordinator and a graphic designer. They manage and maintain the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, etc., as well as they focus on the content generation across all of these platforms. So whenever you see all of those promotional stuff, as well as like the challenges that are on the Instagram page, like the LFE Founders Week challenge, where like over a period of a week or you post a different picture each day. These were all efforts that the communications team came up with. They also work on establishing the annual communications plan, such as the November month of service, as well as the March month of culture, where we wanted to push out more content during these months to basically get our chapters to do more in these specific areas. They design, coordinate, and create campaigns for social media, recruitment, emails, and websites. They basically put together like any documentations that might need to go out for like rush or stuff like that, as well as working with other teams on these efforts, as well as updating the website too, and newsletters and any other promotional materials.
So the expansion team, as I'm sure you guys know, and the man Van Dal himself is in here. We've been doing a great job at expanding. Like we definitely pull up with a lot of chapters, and just to talk about it, this team is made of the director of expansion as well as a team of expansion coordinators. So within this role, you're basically working with the university with interest groups. You're focused on expansion projects and the work that goes behind it, compiling data, demographics on chapters, and pursuing possible expansion projects at specified targeted universities, or just working with ones that we already have existing interest groups. I think a key aspect of this position is just communicating with university officials, as well as meeting to present about the fraternity to open the doors for expansion.
So here we have the education team. It's made up of the director of education as well as the education administrators. They basically work on writing as well as editing the fraternity education manual. We have the Noble Brother Program 2.0 that's being pushed out. They've worked on putting the content into it as well as documenting any traditions or rituals that may be going into that process. So they research and administrate the education process in compliance with the best practices of the industries, what universities want to see in these processes when we need to submit it to them, as well as like implementing anything else that they might find, and revising fraternity education practices according to the membership feedback that we receive as well. So during these education trainings and the retreats that we have during orientation as well as leadership summit, not orientation and convention, they host these trainings for all of the new incoming new member educators. So in order to be a new member educator now, you have to undergo the Noble Brother Program training that occurs during these events. So the education team focuses on putting together the information that's needed during these presentations, as well as the last bullet says, they plan to execute the semi-annual education retreats.
Yeah, so I know we went through all that pretty quickly. Again, we'll open the doors for a Q&A a little later on if you want to go back, revisit some of these conversations. But just generally speaking, we have we've added a little QR code that directs you to our national website, the leadership section. What you can find here is basically a detail on who's holding what position. It kind of gives an understanding on how everyone works together and how things flow. I'll link it into the chat, but feel free to look at this later on. It's an interesting look.
Yeah, the QR code actually goes to a page that gives you more descriptions about each of the different international board positions, as well as their like roles and responsibilities. Guys, a little bit of time if anyone needs to grab the link or the QR code. All right, let's move on. So next up, it's regarding the events that we have as an international board. As a member of the international board, there's a bunch of various opportunities for development as well as collaborations. And some of the most notable events, which are like basically the only times that we really get together as a board, are the Leadership Summit, Winter Orientation, as well as the International Convention. So Summit and Convention are in rotating locations, but orientation the last couple of years have been in Vegas. Along with being on the international board, there is a stipend for registration, travel, as well as housing to these events. Uh, and a little bit of breakdown of each of these events during Leadership Summit. Select positions go to it, but it's basically a training and welcome into the international boards. And it's an emphasis on team bonding. This is the first time that members of the newly incoming international board get to meet with each other in person and stuff like that. Next up, we have winter orientation that's during MLK weekend in January. It includes select positions, and the president as well as new member educators will be going out to this. So all of the members on the international board, we help out in all of these events to basically facilitate, make sure that members are going to the right places, there's no stragglers around. And for example, during today, with the convention being virtual, all of the international board members are making sure that bros are behaving, as well as like people are muted and making sure that everyone has access or able to get in there and answer any questions that people may have. And then the last one, you have the International Convention, which occurs during Memorial Day weekend, includes assisting and coordinating and of the execution of convention workshops and training. Yeah. So representing the brotherhood on a global scale. One, develop and maintain professional relationships with our university faculty. At the end of the day, we don't really exist without our universities. Without the universities allowing us to be on campus, they could kick us off and wouldn't be able to be there, right? So one of the main responsibilities that we have is to maintain that relationship and work in tandem with these university faculty in developing that mutually beneficial relationship. There's a lot of chapters that have really successful Lambda Phi Epsilon chapters that give back to the community, give back to the university, and they're recognized for it. And a lot of the chapters and the universities really enjoy having those chapters there. But on the flip side of that, there's a lot of universities that don't really like Lambdas and would take any opportunity they could to basically get another Asian interest fraternity in there. So we're trying to work on maintaining that build that relationship, maintaining it, and basically just trying to help our fraternity gain success.
And two, we have represent the fraternity to our stakeholders and the general public. Ideally, the international board serves as a general voice of the fraternity. There's a reason why international board members represent the fraternity at conferences such as ICASU, the East Coast Asian American Student Union, as well as things like AFA, the Association of Fraternity Sorority Advisors, AFLD, the Association of Fraternal Leadership and Values. These events, we constantly have attendance just because we want to advocate for our fraternity's direction, where we stand right now, and our presence. Alongside that, a lot of our chapters are trained to know that if a news outlet reaches out to our chapter, that they should not be the ones responding. They should be redirecting this conversation to the international board, specifically the executive director, someone that's just trained to handle these sort of situations and sort of correspondence. And number three, international board members are trained to handle the day-to-day operations of the fraternity to ensure continuous momentum and longevity. At the end of the day, we're focusing on the bigger picture here. So it's pretty self-explanatory. We're here just working to ensure that our kids and our kids' kids are able to have the opportunity to join a fraternity like as great as ours and have those experiences that we've had.
So some personal experiences. Picture you have on the left was from 2015. That was our first convention after both of us chartered our chapters at Syracuse and DePaul. And then these are all the pictures throughout the years when we served on the international board. I can start off by giving a little bit about my experiences. So I joined the board alongside my pledge bro, Brian, 2 years ago as the Northeast governor. And I guess the main reason why I wanted to join the board was because I want to, like, we always say that this fraternity and this brotherhood lasts beyond college, right? So I really wanted to give back to this fraternity that honestly gave me so much. Like, I would say that I had a pretty eventful Lambda career. Like, I charted my chapter at Syracuse University. I traveled to almost every region right after crossing. And I just really want to help in any way that I could to enhance the Lambda life for my fellow brothers. One of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do this was for the Brotherhood rallies in the Northeast. It was one of the only times besides Buffalo Halloween that brothers from the entire Northeast come together and honestly just chill and spend time with each other. So once I joined as the Northeast governor, I had the intention of rebranding ECBR to Northeast. So it was originally called East Coast Brotherhood Rally because they included all of the East Coast. But then eventually, as the regions got bigger, it split up, and the Southeast had their own Brotherhood Rally. So I wanted to rebrand and basically make it lit and make it fun again. So I rebranded Northeast Brotherhood Rally. Got the shirt on right now, and once I did this, once I rebranded, I invited all the chapters out. I wanted to get everyone together, spend the weekend doing trainings, competitions, socials, and just spending time with each other. And since then, I've served as, or currently serve as, a director of undergraduate operations, and I applied to be the vice president of external affairs. I guess my main goals on working on the board is to basically continue to bridge that gap between chapters and the international board, as well as to work to continue to enhance their Lambda life for my fellow brothers.
Yeah, and off of that, as Calvin mentioned, we both crossed in the spring of 2015, but we crossed the different chapters. We're talking different regions. We got the Midwest, we got the Northeast, and here we are 5 years ago, 5 years after that point, and we're still close. I think that's just a testament to how real this brotherhood is. And as an undergrad, I just had the privilege to say that I chartered, I served as president, new member educator, like all these other positions. And I think the big tipping point was that's what led me to wanting to serve on the international board. And at first, interestingly enough, I served on the communications team. And I had the privilege to work with great people such as Brian Sono, previous board members, Brenda Dang, Charles Liang. And there was a lot of value in the position and responsibilities. However, I quickly learned that marketing, social media, those just weren't my biggest strengths. At the time, the Midwest governor, Kent Say, he wanted me to be his replacement after he left the board. So I worked under him unofficially as the lieutenant governor. And I just found that working on the operations team, the work that it did, the correspondence with universities, working with undergrad chapters, planning events, that's stuff that I enjoyed. So don't get me wrong, working on the communications team was great. I learned a lot of important values, such as the importance of branding, and it let me utilize my experiences to create like digital content. It's just something about operations just felt more natural, and it was a role that I wanted to serve in, and which I served for the next 2 years. And with that being said, I just think it's something awesome that volunteering on the board has this. There are just so many opportunities for you to get involved and express some of your passions and some of your skills. Even though communications didn't line up with me completely, I definitely found an opportunity on the operations team. And just real quick, as governor, some of my best memories include planning regional events, just working with them in general, and off of that, just traveling. And I think the traveling aspect really ties into what we're talking about here today, and what Calvin mentioned with all these pictures. Like that left picture, like that was from convention 2015, right? And just as time went on, we have a picture from the summer of 2018 when we went up like the rocky steps. On top right, we got a picture of just following up a long day of meetings with axe throwing, like an activity. And the bottom picture is a recent one for orientation in Las Vegas. Traveling really opens up the idea of Lambdas, and as a member of the international board, it's an opportunity and it's an option for you. With that being said, in personal experience, being on the board just gave me the opportunity to reconnect with brothers, just travel to different cities, and serve the fraternity that we care so much about.
Yeah, the two pictures on the right side, all those people are our pledge bros. Those are all Spring 15s that were on the international board, which was pretty dope. At one point, there was 6 or 7 of us on the international board, and we were the youngest members on the board. Let's see, continuing on. So, does anyone have any questions? What do you want to know? That's the chat.
Anything we pop up that Hoover?
I'll pull up the Hoover.
Let's see. The first question we have is just most memorable moments with the board. I answer first to give you some time to think, but I think it's what we were talking about earlier, just that traveling component. There's so many opportunities to get around, 3 events per year. There's the professional standpoint where you actually get to get the work done, and then there's the social component where you get to work with all these people that that did amazing work for their chapters, and they're just trying to take that to the next level.
Yeah, in my head, it's just like collaborating on a larger scale, right? We're planning events while not even being together. We're all collaborating online so that when we do meet up for orientation for convention, that we have all of these lit things and these fun events for you guys to come to and enjoy. And I think one of my best memories is just being in there in person with the rest of the board. Like we went out in Vegas together, you know, went to the club, went to Hakkasan. Like we went out, did yeah, always out eating together and whatnot. Oh, we have a couple questions in the chat. So what is the
Nice.
average term for IB? The average term would be 2 years, but there's like occasional times when people will stay on for a year, might switch teams or realize that they have other time commitments and they might end up stepping off the board. But the typical term is 2 years. Let's see. What's the time commitment like for you? So Brian, do you want to go over what the time commitment's like as a governor right now? I mean, Brian also
Sure
leads,
thing.
he has 2 districts right now, so that's a thing as well, but
I think specifically for us on the operations front, like it ranges. As Calvin mentioned, I look at two different two districts, so I have 8 chapters working with them. They need the same attention. Every chapter needs kind of get the same information, get that same work. So by weekly basis, I'm looking at maybe, and also there are times that are just more time intensive. Let's say coming up close to a dues deadline or right before the beginning of the year where we're just releasing information. Those times take a little longer. So I'd say on average, on a busy spectrum, I'd be looking at like 5 hours a week. On a more relaxed time, I check in every now and then, maybe an hour or two a week, just to make sure things are going smoothly. Again, other teams, other positions have different times.
I would say that both of us are on the operations team, so I would say that my hours are pretty much in line with that as well. A lot of it is just reaching out to these presidents and making sure that those communication channels are open. I'm not actively like on my computer waiting for this guy to respond. I'll either like send him a message or send him an email and then wait for him to get back to me. Sometimes like university officials will contact me about getting some sort of like data, and then I have to go back to the president. And like it might take some time, but I think for the most part, unless deadlines are coming up and you have to collect dues from every single chapter and whatnot, then on average, less than 10 hours a week easily.
Let's see. I'm loading up the chat right now. What is the national board's main focus objective for the next upcoming term? I think one thing to be said is just we're facing everything that the undergrads are facing right now. As they go back to school in fall, as they go back to school in spring, they got all these questions that they're going to be having to find answers to. And we're here to provide some resources on that. So I'd say a big objective in that discussion is just making sure that they're well prepared for all of it.
As for like the tier system, you could join any team that you would want to as a volunteer, and then it would require like I would say a year experience on the board or 2 years experience, and then you can become a director. And in order to join the BOD, you need to have 2 years experience on the board, as well as a couple other requirements, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, there's inclusions such as like that age,
Yeah.
rule, and regulations. Ideally, the goal is that you're serving on the board, you have that experience, that understanding before you take the steps on joining the board of directors.
Yeah, there's also been instances like I was a governor for 1 year and then I stepped on as a director the following year afterwards. And then now I'm applying to be the VPX.
Oh.
Does anyone have any more
Yeah.
questions?
Anything left on that Hoover? I like what Paulo said.
Yeah, we all have real jobs.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, everyone
factual.
that serves on it is a volunteer. Yeah. I got a question on the board. just want to run it through you, Calvin. We got what other opportunities are there to help besides commuting to NAT board? Any ideas
Besides
on
what?
that? Besides commuting to NAT board.
Commuting to NAT board?
Yeah, that's the wording they got on there.
I think there's plenty of room for collaborations. Like, let's say that you want to help out with the chartering of a new chapter nearby. You know that there's an interest group at a nearby chapter. You could reach out to the expansion team and notify them if they don't already know about that. You don't directly have to join the international board, but there's plenty of room for you to volunteer if need be. Like, there's certain teams like operations. If we want to host a brotherhood rally, we need to look at a chapter to basically host the rally at that chapter, right? So like when I hosted the Northeast Brotherhood rally, I wanted ended up being in Binghamton, so I needed the chapter there to basically collaborate with me on finding spaces, find hotels, and all that type of stuff. So there's plenty of room with collaboration on the international board if you're not ready to join the national board, or if you haven't graduated yet.
Good answer.
Yeah. It's just a matter of what you might be interested in. There's a lot of different areas on the international board that you could join. It's just what aligns with your interests. Some people like working on the expansion project. Some people, I liked working directly with the chapters. Right after I graduated, I still had good connections with all the presidents in the Northeast. I went to school with a lot of them. I went to high school with a lot of them, so I still maintain contact with them. So it was pretty like fluid and straightforward for me when I stepped in as governor, and it was pretty enjoyable because everyone was pretty much just my friends. So it's more of what you would feel comfortable doing, what you're interested in doing as well. You might join a position and find out that you're not interested in that, and then you might switch and join over to a different team. Like Brian was on communications for a while and he came over to operations. So I think the biggest thing is just understanding what each team does and see what you might want to do.
Yeah. Again, there's just so much variety you can choose from, and there's a lot of stuff that we probably don't have listed yet that could be changed by your input.
So if you're on the international board already, if you're reapplying, then feel free to apply for any other positions that you might be interested in, or just apply for the same position that you want. So there's a lot of governors that's going to be staying. There's a couple people that are moving to different teams as well.
I got a question. The question is, how often does an average international board member travel? And as we mentioned before, we got those 3 key events. We got that leadership summit during summer. We have orientation in January. We got convention in May. And a lot of our responsibilities are, depending on your team, you could be going all 3 of these. You can go to particular ones. All of us are expected at convention. So there are a lot of opportunities for all hands like in-person meetings. Depending on your team, this could change, of course. As I served as a district governor, I'd be visiting my chapters more regularly, especially during times where we're getting ready for a regional event. Teams like expansion, where they have to actually show up to the universities, make those presentations, they could be seeing more travel than others. Let's see, education, same front with the education trainings. So again, one of those tricky ones where everything's kind of different.
Yeah.
I will say though, it's definitely a good opportunity to travel because a lot of our things are rotating. Orientation seems to be the only thing that's fixed in Vegas. And I mean, going to Vegas on an annual trip isn't too bad. Outside of that, what we got, conventions rotating gives you a couple opportunities to see different states. Same thing with Summit.
Summit. Yeah, ultimately it just varies depending on the team.
It's nice to have that excuse too. Like you're working your typical 9 to 5, and you're working your 9 to 5, and you know a random trip is coming up, or like a trip to training's coming up. You just get to break out of your normal routine and just enjoy life a little bit.
I don't got any vacations coming up. I know I'm going to Vegas in January.
All right, we're looking at our last, let's say 12 minutes.
Yeah.
See if we got any more questions in the next 5. Oh, let's see. Is anyone interested in any particular team, any particular position? Expansion Education. Is there anything in particular you want to know about those two teams?
So here we have a general interest form, the QR code to the application that Van linked up above if you guys want to apply or find out more about the positions. More concerned about time commitments to identify, but you guys are more
It is a good thing to consider. Like,
yeah.
a lot of people that join the international board, they're about to graduate or they just graduated. They're transitioning from the education system to their first couple jobs. They don't know what that 9 to 5 means to them. Like, any of us that work a 9 to 5, like, sometimes it's up in the air. 9 to 5 can turn into like a 7 to 7. So having that understanding that it's kind of flexible, it's nice to know. It's manageable. Was the transition difficult for you guys?
I would say for me, not really. So being a consultant, I do a lot of work remotely anyways. So I just needed to take a couple of days off to do some stuff. But other than that, like throughout the day, I'm working on my laptop so I can respond to messages and any other things as well. So I'd say it wasn't really too difficult of a transition for me.
Same here. I had the opportunity to actually start on the board while I was still in school. So I was in school part-time during my last quarter at DePaul. And because of that, I was able to kind of spend some more time focusing on the board stuff just as much as I would as an active, for an active chapter. And as that grew into operations, it just became more manageable. I knew what I was getting myself into. And I think the work you do in your chapters is pretty good translation into the work that you can be doing for the board.
Yeah.
Learning internet etiquette was probably the hardest transition.
Let's see. Is there anything
Another
else?
thing, real quick, just another thing is if you guys, Calvin and I, we do a lot of talking on the operations just because it's something that we're tied to. Bannon, who's been active on the chat, is currently the director of expansion. So if you have any questions, you can redirect them to him. If you guys have any questions on any other components of the international board that you want to talk to someone in a position that's currently right now, feel free to reach out to us. We'll redirect you. The guys on the board are great. I'm sure they'll answer anything you need to know.